free to popcorn in if well, with the ODFW, or in of what we consider, I know people are shy. I'm just going to make sure that I have my presentation up just real quick and queued up.
So an invasive species, it could be a species that's brought in from like a different state or from a different area, but it doesn't always have to be that. It could be a native species that has just been given the perfect environment to thrive, and it can cause economic damage, damage to health, or damage to other species, and then it becomes an invasive species.
Yeah. So I think a really great example of that is this one right here. Is the come on, are
we sharing?
Yeah, we're sharing. It's a signal crayfish. So they are native to Oregon, but it was introduced into Crater Lake by humans, and it gave the Mazuma newt run for his money. So in that situation, he is invasive, even though again he's a native. No, only native crawdad here in Oregon. That is one of those kind of sticking points. But also, you know, something like a dog, well, they're not native here. We do not consider them invasive because they do not cause economic or environmental or health problems for humans. So before we get too into the weeds of invasive species, and especially about quagga and zebra mussels, one of the kind of things to keep in the back of your mind is the kind of invasion curve. So we really stress the early detection and rapid response. So we, you know, if we can get nip a problem in the bud, it makes it more likely that we'll be able to eradicate it rather than having to learn to live with the problem. And of course, the sooner we can get our working on that problem, then the quicker and less costly that we can hopefully take care of it.
All right, so the big public enemy number one that we're all really concerned with are the zebra and quagga mussels. So zebra and quagga mussels were brought over, they're native to the Black Sea, and they were brought over in ballast water. They were discovered in the Great Lakes in the 1980s, and throughout the years, they've just been slowly working their way to the western coast. They are a mussel. They're probably about the size of your fingernail. When they are juvenile, they're called a veliger, and they're microscopic. So they could just be in standing water and you would have no idea because we can't see them to the naked eye.
And one of the particularly nasty aspects of them is that they have about 500 bisel threads where they can kind of latch on to any kind of hard surface. So like a pipe or a motorboat or a kayak, a canoe, or a raft.
So any kind of watercraft that goes in the water can transport them.
Yeah. So they really affect the ecosystem. Why is that, Sarah?
So these guys are filter feeders, and they suck up all the phytoplankton that's in the water that say like our salmon need to grow. And clear water doesn't always mean healthy water.
Yeah, so I can kind of have a little visualization of this right here, which I think is very, very useful. Hopefully you can see this screen share. But those phytoplankton are the building blocks, and they clarify the water. And that can cause problems like it can, it can, with the increased sunlighting coming in with that clear water, aquatic weeds can grow where they're not normally are, kind of messing up our water bodies for recreation or and our ability to kind of use the water in a reservoir. And that's very costly to remove. Do you remember how much we talked with the water improvement, the Devil's Lake Water Improvement District Manager? How much did he spend to get rid of his aquatic weeds?
I believe he said he spent like, what was it, like 50 grand for just a machine to run for a couple months at a time.
Yeah. So yeah, and it does, and with that kind of clear water, it does make the water warmer, which can kind of negatively affect other aquatic life who might like the water a little colder. And they can also selectively reject blue-green algae. So if you're not familiar with that, that's, you know, what causes the cyanobacteria. So it can cause increased blooms of blue-green algae with infested water bodies. And that can, with both in terms of severity and frequency. So that can really negatively impact recreation. And again, it can negatively impact human health. Sometimes, you know, occasionally water bodies have to be shut down to swimming and fishing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and on a note of them being filter feeders, that means that if there's also any kind of pollution that's in the water, they're going to absorb it and collect it. And so say a fish eats one of them and it now has the poison in it, and then a bird comes and eats that fish, and then now the bird is sick.
Yeah, I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, quagga mussels can concentrate up to like 300,000 times the pollutants and metals in the water than what is, you know, at the normal concentration of the water. And that can kind of, yeah, well, as Sarah said, work its way up and through the food chain. So we did kind of get talked a little bit about the impacts to wildlife. So, and again, this is just a freshwater mussel that I kind of grabbed from, I think it was one of the Great Lakes Fish and Wildlife. They're one of their native mussels. I don't know what it is, but the zebra mussels, as you can see, will cling to any hard surface and they will suffocate our native mussels.
Yeah, they've even been found to cling onto fish themselves.
Oh, oops. Ah.
Wow, that is fascinating. Hey, I just wanted to mention also, folks, if you have questions, put them in the chat down below, and we'll make sure that you have a chance to have those answered. Thank you. Wow. Continue.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about salmon. They're very important here in Oregon, and they're important to a lot of people. You know, like we're right now in Enterprise, in the traditional land of the Nez Perce, and they're very important to them. They're a cultural keystone species, but they're also environmental keystone species. Like when they go out to the ocean, they bring a lot of nutrients that return to our freshwater ecologies. Sarah, how many? Again, we talked about the phytoplankton.
Yeah, so not only are they going to lose the phytoplankton that's in the water, our salmon are going to be impacted because the mussels like to cling on to any surface. Like I said, the dams, the fish, the clams. When our salmon are going and trying to spawn, they're going to be going through like fish passages and through hard surfaces, and the shells of the mussels are going to just shred their bodies up.
Yeah, what was I going to say? They are, yeah, salmon, when I moved up to Oregon, so I'm originally from Texas, and I told my father that I was going to be in Oregon working with ODFW, and he didn't say, oh, good luck, good job, oh, I'm so proud of you. He's like, you got to send me some salmon. So I think salmon is kind of one of that thing, like, what would Oregon be without our salmon?
Exactly.
Let's see here.
Touched on that one already.
Impacts to humans. Okay, so I have a really scary slide for y'all right here. So so this is from a report in 2023 that kind of shows the kind of cost of biological invaders. So not just zebra and quagga mussels, but also like invasive weeds and other invasives. As you can see, they've kind of grown the cost. It's right here in red. This is North America. It's increased by 1,500% pretty much, costing $467 billion each year. And just to kind of compare that to what we're all experiencing right now, kind of east of the Cascades as wildfires, which costs North American taxpayers about $83.9 billion in damage. And it has been kind of increasing as time goes by, and that's just because that you know, we're an increasing mobile community, mobile society, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just something to be aware of. Like Sarah had mentioned, they originally came from the Black Sea, and just as our world kind of gets smaller and the kind of cost kind of increases. We do have, and I know, how much was it they spent in Idaho? So they did find quagga and zebra mussels in Idaho.
It was what, 6 million for a 3-mile stretch?
Yeah, and that was on the Snake River, kind of over by Twin Falls, so on the Utah border, so they're very close. And that resulted in, like, they used copper sulfate, and that
Unfortunately, that kills every other bit of aquatic life that's in that stretch that's being treated. So we don't actually have a method to get rid of them once they're established that doesn't also kill other aquatic life.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. So zebra and quagga mussels can kind of close themselves off when they kind of sense chemicals. So it has to be continuously like poisoning the rivers, essentially. They can also, and I just learned this today, like just a couple hours ago, as I was reviewing for this, they can actually detach themselves from their threads and kind of move up and down and across the water column if they can kind of sense like that their environment is kind of toxic. But there is a reason why they spent that $3 million and why they wanted to, why they felt like that the 6 to 7 tons of dead aquatic life was kind of worth it, so to speak. And that's because it's just very costly to the taxpayers. So I found a report, it would cost about 500 million estimated cost for the residents of the Columbia River Basin in the loss of production and higher electricity rates, 23 million for a one-time mussel treatment just for Bonneville alone, and then $1.5 million estimated in annual maintenance costs, and 1.8 million estimated annual cost to Columbia River Basin water treatment plants. And so we all live in the Columbia River Basin. And for irrigation, there are a lot of things. So it's an estimated cost of about, you know, pretty much approximately $8 million to farmers using sprinkler irrigation systems, and about 2.5 to private residences with domestic self-supply. So again, we might think, okay, well, sportsmen, fishermen, you know, recreators, kayakers, oh, they're going to be the ones affected. I don't really do those things. It doesn't matter. But if you enjoy getting water out of a tap or out of a well, or you enjoy turning on your light with a switch, it will be costing you. This is a problem that does affect you. They do this in kind of a separate way. So they do attach to those threads. It can constrict the flow of pipes. They reduce the intake and heat exchangers, condensers, and cooling systems. And the pipes actually can kind of their internal diameter kind of can be reduced to by as much as 2/3. So it increases the frictional resistance, and then which in turn increase pumping costs. So that is a lot of money. And not only that, but they're byssal threads. They form these dense mats, and they do remain there after the mussel is gone, which provides a great environment for bacteria, and then acidic compounds start to form through anaerobic respiration, and that causes pitting and corrosion, even on concrete. So that's pretty costly. And again, it's not just getting rid of the mussel itself, but the thread. So as I mentioned, down in Texas, we do have, I'm from Texas, we have them. I'm from Austin. They have, our water bodies have them there, and that's just one of those things that they're kind of having to live with. So when they did die, it caused just a really horrific smell, which smelled like sewage. And that kind of got transmitted in the city's water supply. They employ both human and robotic divers to constantly monitor for them, but also to scrape them off of their things. And I think I've read that they retrofitted the water treatment plants, but that's a lot of money. Did someone have a question? I thought I heard something. No?
Folks can go ahead and put their questions in the chat if they have the questions, please do that, and then we can read them off.
Yeah. So as we're talking about that, so we are with the Friends of Owyhee, and it is one of the highest risk water bodies for both establishment and introduction. What kind of causes that, Sarah?
So Owyee's high risk because of the calcium levels and just the general location to infested water bodies.
And it also has kind of a more alkaline, as much as a lot of the kind of high desert reservoirs. So they need the calcium for their shells to grow. I know Sarah had mentioned that the Willamette probably won't ever have it.
Yeah, the Willamette supposedly has too low of calcium levels for them to be able to form shells, but they have shown up in areas that we thought they wouldn't be able to establish originally.
Yeah, and that's like in the southeast, and in the south, like in Texas and that sort of thing, because they thought, oh, well, the water's going to be too high of a temperature to do that. And I know we have worked at the Ontario check station before, and we would get a lot of people coming in. Specifically, their destination was Owyhee, just because it's so gorgeous and it's so beautiful.
And we also, at the Ontario check station, caught 9 boats last year that had live mussels on them.
Yeah, and again, the water, then they're usually transported, by those watercrafts and by people kind of moving around and doing their little cross country whatevers. And again, and the location in Eastern Oregon it's just right off of 84. It kind of connects to people coming in from Utah, in which Lake Powell is a infested water body. And then we have a lot of people coming in from Nevada. So there's Lake Mead there, and where's Havasu? Is that in Arizona?
Havasu, yeah, Arizona.
So there's, that highway the interstate system, and it's alkalinity and the calcium, and it just being such a gorgeous location really kind of puts it at a high risk to get over there. And and that's just one of those things, I'm sorry about that, that we do. And I didn't forget to mention interbasin transfers. So we had thought someone from the Owyhee Irrigation District would be here today, and he could hopefully tell us a little bit more about that. But that is also another problem and way they can spread is usually when one, and it's an interbasin transfer is just basically transfer of water from one place, one reservoir to another, or one watershed to another, or another. They can kind of attach to canals and kind of mess that up. And we know in Eastern Oregon, agriculture is pretty much lifeblood, and we do enjoy the Ontario potatoes and onions, and a little further west, we love those Hermiston watermelons. So we just want to make sure that we are protecting that, and protecting, you know, these gorgeous views, you know, and in these places.
Yeah, so the impacts to sportsmen and recreators is, so not only are our salmon going to have a big, or not only are our salmon going to take a big hit, and there's going to be less recreation with fishing for salmon and whatnot. They also tend to cluster up on the shore. So over in the Great Lakes, they have to take like a bulldozer and just scrape alongside the shore, and it smells really bad, and then it cuts your feet. So getting out to the lake and having a beach day is going to be not very enjoyable.
And one of those things that we've enjoyed about Owyhee are those nice sandy beaches. Like, it is some of the best swimming that we've had in Oregon. And we've been to so many water bodies, so many rivers, and Owyhee is like one of our just top places for swimming. This is so lovely there, and you know, our public spaces are so important to us. You know, I worked in the parks down in Texas. I've witnessed baptisms, weddings, family celebrations, and they're really, really special places, which kind of make the background of our lives. You know, especially as everything just gets built up more and more, and we have more, we were losing more of those wild places, and one of those places where you can just actually have quiet, you know, and enjoy the wind going through, blowing through the trees. Like, that's becoming more and more rare. And I think we all have a duty to protect that. And, you know, I know this is the Friends of the Owyhee, but, and again, water moves, people move. So it makes it, in a way, we have to be friends of the Owyhee. To be a friend of the Owyhee, you have to be a friend of, you know, Brownlee Reservoir or Prineville Reservoir, of being a friend of Wallowa Lake, just so that we can keep our beautiful spaces and our open spaces actually accessible, because they do shut down water bodies as kind of a last resort. You know, I was just looking over the mussel rapid response plan, and we do have that kind of, I don't really want to say we do, but I know that Montana does have authority, like, to quarantine areas, to, you know, just shut them down. Just, you know, again, when it comes to our water supply for drinking, sometimes that takes precedence, or for irrigating our fields.
Does anybody have any questions
on zebra or quagga mussels? No questions?
I think I had a question actually about where do you suppose, I think we talked about this last time, but where has been the closest body of water in which the mussels have been found? I think you had mentioned something about them being in the Snake River, at some on the Idaho side, and where we get a lot of boats in from there. So, and also we had talked about the lack of very many checkpoints. We have the Ontario checkpoint, we have the Marsing checkpoint, and we don't, you know, those are only open certain hours, and we have a lot of traffic that is able to come through around those. And so can you remind me where those were found in the Snake River?
So kind of on the border of Utah, like Twin Falls. I don't have a map in front of me, but yeah, in Twin Falls. And I know, like, and again, like we mentioned, Lake Mead's down there. It's not too far of a drive from to Owyhee. I don't know how many miles Lake Havasu is, but that's another infested water body.
Yeah, the water bodies that we are mainly looking for when we're at the inspection stations are Lake Havasu, Lake Mead, and now if they're coming from the Snake.
Yeah, and that's another thing I had forgot to mention, the snake, we were at Hell's Canyon at Copperfield Park. And that the Hell's Canyon complex, that kind of that's about 70% of Idaho Power's hydroelectric power right there, and they get 30% of that is what of that 70% of the hydroelectric power. So that's a very big cause of concern for anyone who's a customer of Idaho Power.
All right, well, we're going to talk about some other invasive species, unless anybody still has some questions about the mussels.
I did have one more question about the mussels.
Okay.
Do we think if we get the check stations in that we could completely prevent this, or are we just prolonging the inevitable, like it's eventually going to get here?
Yeah, so pretty much it's not really, it's a matter of when they're going to get here. We're just trying to keep them out as long as possible. But having more check stations, having wash stations would really help.
Yeah, and going back to this, it's also a matter.
We're in the prevention stage, right?
We're in the prevention stage. Yeah, they will get here, and I really love it. Again, I've mentioned I'm from Texas. When they got the mussels there, they just threw their hands up. It's like, okay, they're here. Oregon, we're being extra vigilant. Like, we're routinely testing our water bodies for using eDNA for the presence of quagga and zebra mussels. And we do coordinate with other Western states, so like Montana, Idaho, Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, so that we can kind of track watercrafts, and we talk to each other. What's this Montana has for their the way they take care of their boats?
What do you mean?
Wasn't there something like a Montana key or something like that?
Oh yeah, so Montana, when we find a dirty boat or a boat that has invasive species on it, we call it a dirty boat. We put a dry time on it, and then we put a tag on the boat so that if they do launch it, it'll break it, and we'll know that they've launched before their dry time. Montana uses like a chain and a key, and you have to go to, if you're coming to Oregon, you have to come to one of our inspection stations, and we have to unlock it with a key that we have.
And I mean, I know it can kind of seem like doom and gloom, but what I really love about Oregon is that I think it has more of a conservation mindset, and again, that kind of prevention mindset. And so if we do find the quagga mussels within the state, I'm sure that at that point, I mean, I can't say for sure, but it would be pretty likely that they would take measures like maybe having inspectors at that water body, washing every boat that comes off with a hot water pressure washer.
But to answer your question, yes, it is just a matter of time before they get here. We are being proactive about it. We could probably be a little bit more proactive about it.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully with everything that we're doing, it's a long time before they get here.
Yeah, and it does suck. It's really heartbreaking, like what happened in the snake, where they did treat it with copper sulfate. A 35-year-old sturgeon that was over 8 feet long. I mean, that was one of those dead aquatic lives that Idaho Fish and Game pulled out. But but they did it early on, and
it's testing negative right now. But for us to say that it's a non-infested water body, it has to test negative for 5 years in a row. So Montana, they found, I think, an adult or some villagers, but they found some, and they treated it and took care of it, and they have tested negative for the last 5 years. So now they're considered clean again. So it can be done. I mean, Montana did it.
If like Lake Owyhee would be a lot bigger of a scale to be able to use that same treatment compared to where it was infested in the Snake River?
It would be devastating to Lake Owyhee. It would kill all the aquatic wildlife if we treated the entire.
The kind of
reservoir.
the depth is definitely a concern, and just how large it is. You know, but I do believe that, yeah, that could be really, really heartbreaking and
Mhm.
devastating. And again, especially since that's where the water for the Ontario onions comes from.
Right, exactly. And so I'm not trying to be a downer at all. I'm just trying to get a realistic perspective on the scope of the problem and the timing of the problem, and really
Yeah,
hope that you guys get the political support you need for increasing the prevention measures where we're at right now, basically.
Yeah, it's very scary and it definitely should be taken a lot more seriously.
Yeah, on our end, our challenges that we face is that it's a matter of hiring and funding.
And the problem doesn't tend to get taken seriously until the problem's at your doorstep.
Yeah, you know, there are only so many man hours that we have for the check stations. There are only so many people that they can get hired on. We were at Ontario last summer, instead of doing our kind of around the state inspections and education, because they just couldn't hire.
We're a very
people.
small program. There's not very many of us.
So yeah, no, it's very, very small. But we do live in a democracy, and you can, however, which way, you know, you have that option.
One of the things, oh, go ahead, Blue.
Mine's quick. I just wanted to say it really makes me appreciate what you're doing on such a limited budget and limited manpower even more, that it's really important, and I really want to say thank you very much.
Oh,
Yeah.
we love to hear that. We
Thank
do.
you.
It makes us happy.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, we were out at Hell's Canyon in 110 weather.
I got stung by a wasp.
But it's worth it. We love Oregon. We love our salmon. We love our waters, and we love our public spaces. And that's what makes it worth it to us to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up here in Oregon, and I would like to be able to take my daughter to these water bodies as well. So it's definitely a personal concern of mine as well, and Sierra's. So it's something that we care about also personally.
Yeah, we had went to Paulina and East Lake, which are also those high-risk water bodies, and I spoke with the ranger there, and he was like, yeah, no, I'm from Texas and I was working at this place, and then it happened. And I was like, yeah, I know, you can't take dogs in certain parts around Travis County anymore, just because it's just, there's too much of that algae blooms that are happening. And you can't go swimming, and that's devastating. And especially it's those places that we care about. But yeah, no,
exactly.
But I do love it that Oregon isn't just throwing their hands up. You know, we have a plan. Our old supervisor once said we had a scare of mossballs that had.
Oh, we just recently had another
one too. You know, and they had actually, at that point, they had gotten out into commercial stores, and he
took himself to the stores and got the
he drove to every single store along the Oregon, every single aquarium store and along the Oregon coast, picking them up. And we did get an alert from Washington saying that they stopped a shipment of infected or infested mossballs for aquariums, and they had, again, since this had already happened, they went to they prevented them from actually getting on the on the shelves of the stores. So again, there's this really, the kind of coordination between the states gives me a lot of hope.
So I just saw a question from Brad saying, where would an additional check station be located? So we actually do have some stuff in the works right now. We did get extra funding for the eastern side of Oregon, and it sounds like they're trying to get together 3 how many teams was it?
It was like either 3 or 6.
3 or 6 teams of 2 people to go to, it's written on our board in our office. I know Fruitland was one. Nissa was another one. And all those little areas where people are sneaking by is where they were planning on having other roving teams like Sierra and I go set up and be able to catch everybody.
Yeah. And, you know, we got back from a few weeks ago, or maybe it was last month. It's been a long summer. Sorry. We went to Baker County Park called Hewitt Holcomb. So on the other side of Brownlee from Farewell Bend. And the park manager there was like, look, I want to do everything I can to support y'all. I'm going to, you know, I would build a pavilion to just make it easier for inspectors to be at my parks. So, I mean, there is that kind of, we've met a lot of people who really do care. And we know recreators, they love their waters and they want to be able to fish. So they've been really supportive of, you know, being responsible and checking their own boats. And we've got a call, we actually made a house call to Astoria because someone had purchased a boat used. And we came out there from the Cove Palisades Park, which is just outside of Bend. So Bend to Astoria to go look at his boat. He had barnacles on it, which wasn't, you know.
So luckily it was not what we're looking for.
But we do what we can. And again, any check station can be your own house if you know, check your own water. But
if anybody's ever concerned, they can always call ODFW and we will come out to your house and decontaminate the boat for free.
Okay.
All right.
I think that was one of the things when you mentioned that to the boaters that we saw up at Lake Owyhee the day that you were there. I think that was so well received. You know, people were just like, wow, thank you. You know, we can just call you and make sure that we're clean. And I think one of the things that those of us who are in community can do is make sure that we are letting our friends know about this issue, because the boaters that you talked to in front of me, none of them were aware that they might be carrying these. And it appeared that some of them were like, yeah, I've been in Lake Mead, I've been in Lake Havasu at different times. And they were like, whoa, I had no idea this was a problem. And the boating community really needs to be, you know, made aware of that through us, you know, all of our community.
You know,
we can kind of
what I think is it only takes a spark to get a fire going. So like, you know, if you do know your neighbor is, you know, has a trip to Havasu, you can ask them, hey bud, did you go through one of the check stations on your way back, you know, either in Idaho or in Oregon, and ask them. And you can go to an inspection station and get your boat decontaminated for free if you suspect, if you've been in infested water bodies and you just want to be sure. We've had people do that. And we flush their ballasts and everything. You get, you know, maybe your boat just needs a good wash and you haven't been in an infested water body, but you just want it washed.
Well, we'll only do it from the water line down. So
But yeah.
You have to clean the rest yourself.
You know.
But yeah, if you live near an inspection station and you're always, if you're concerned, you can always just bring your boat on by. You can even drop your boat off and check it, and we're happy to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone have any more questions before we move on? We'll go through this real quick because I know we're ending at 6, right?
Or 7 your time.
Or 7 your time.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We have some other invasives.
We'll run through them real quick. These are the New Zealand mud snails. So obviously they come from New Zealand. An interesting fact about them over here in North America is that they're all female. So over in New Zealand, they have males and females, but over here in North America, they reproduce asexually. So she just clones herself.
Mm-hmm. And so she has a little thing called an operculum, which is like right here, where she can kind of close herself off, and pass like right through a fish, and fish that are in water bodies infested with them they have a lower body weight, and we would much prefer to catch larger fish. And they can just overtake the benthic habitat, which is just the bottom. And then again, that kind of affecting that primary food chain.
And this is another critter that we're checking for at the boat stations as well. These these ladies are super, super tiny, and they can cling onto your boat or onto your boots and waders. And so we ask people to put their boots and waders in the freezer overnight, and that'll kill them, or use 409.
Yeah, or you can you can take those to an inspection station and we'll decontaminate them with hot water.
All right, and then we got the crawdads. So Oregon only has one native crawdad, and that's a signal crayfish. And that's this guy over here on the far right. If you see on his claws, each claw has a white dot on it, and he has a wide back plate, and that's how you can identify him. And he's much bigger than the invasive crawdads, but he's a lot more docile, and the invasives are a lot more aggressive.
Yeah. And that's a tasty invasive species removal project. You can catch up to 100 without a license here in Oregon.
And it's fun to go catch crawdad.
We love it.
Right. And then we have our turtles. So on the left right there is a snapping turtle. We do have them in Oregon. They're mainly found in like the Tualatin River in the Portland area. Same as the one in the middle, that's the red-eared slider. You can identify him by the red line on his face. They both kind of start out as pets, and then people don't realize how big they're going to get, or they just don't want the responsibility anymore, and then they dump them into the nearest water body. And now they're in Oregon competing with the turtle. These two turtles are natives. The one on the left is the western painted turtle, and the one on the right is the western pond turtle.
When we were at the state fair, we'd get a lot of people saying, "Oh, I want one, I want one." We'll just build a nice habitat, and they will come. Oh, there's our frog.
And then we got our frogs. This is the invasive frog, the bullfrog. So the problem with the bullfrog is that if he can fit it in his mouth, he will eat it, including birds and basically whatever.
Should I play the sounds?
Yeah.
Okay, they sound horrible. That's his call. We don't like it. And these are our natives, which are much, I don't know.
They were much prettier
and have a prettier sound. So that's the Pacific tree frog sound. No, stop there. It's much more relaxing. We actually, I heard a chorus of them when I was at the Owyhee River Ranch, kind of outside the window, and it was really nice. It was much more pleasant than the bullfrog, for sure. Let's see. And so we've talked a little bit about what we're doing. Oh, we have a question, I think. Oh, can you all hear the frogs? I don't know. Did you? I don't know if y'all heard them or not. We did.
I wasn't able to
We
hear
heard
them, so I was just seeing if anybody else could hear.
Oh, well, I'm sure you can Google a bullfrog sound. I'm so sorry about that. We've talked a little bit about what we do, and
our inspection stations, our decontamination units, and our education program. Those are the kind of things that ODFW is trying to do to prevent the mussels from getting, or all aquatic invasive species.
And what you can do, yeah, just clean, drain, and dry your boat. Like, it's that simple. Take the time to look over it, actually pull the plug after you come out of the water. Again, let it dry up.
Or you can call 1-866-INVADER if you spot any of these invasive species, or an ODFW office.
Yeah, and again, we didn't really talk a lot about it just because it's the kind of Department of Agriculture's domain, but also plants, aquatic weeds. A lot of them reproduce by fragmentation. So if like a little bit of it breaks up, then now you have new plants everywhere. So yeah, pull the veg, clean your boat, give us a call. And it's a lot of doom and gloom, but we've met so many great people like MJ and Tim, and we've talked to Boy Scouts and retired anglers, and just a whole lot of people who really care a whole lot about protecting our lands. So we have 10 minutes.
Yeah. So if we all care and we all do our part, we can try to keep them out as long as possible.
Do we have any more questions or comments? We have a question here. Oh, where are we?
Yes, absolutely. We have definitely had kayakers, canoes, paddle boards, definitely paddle boards. They've been really surprised, but kayakers have been the most bypassers of the check stations because they just don't think that they're a watercraft. So we have the wording on our sign saying all watercraft, but you know, they just like, I'm not a boat. It must not be me.
Yeah, they can, I think that they've pulled off a quagga mussel off of a raft, and it was you know, they've been out for 3 weeks. And again, that's another thing I think we forgot to mention is that they can live outside of the water for up to 30 days if the conditions are right.
So if you have extreme heat or extreme cold, they'll probably last like a week maybe. But if it's pretty mellow out, pretty moist, they could live up to 30 days. So just make sure you're always draining your boat. There's no standing water on your boat. You've washed it and it's completely been able to dry out.
Do we have any
think
more questions?
That's another one of those things that I feel like most of us just don't know, or at least I don't know.
Oh.
So wow, that's really amazing. So I feel like I definitely want to spread the word to my kayaking friends.
Yeah, and another thing I could add that we had a meeting earlier today with a group of people, and one of the older gentlemen was surprised that he was like, I don't want, you know, when I just get done fishing all day, the last thing I want to do is like scrub my boat down or whatever. And I was like, well, you don't have to do it right away, just as long as you do it before you go into another water body. So don't think it's like daunting and it's something that has to be done after a long day. Just if you do it the next day, just make sure it's getting washed and dried out.
Yeah, and you know, we had a lot of comments about boat washing stations. So I mean, we don't really have a lot of authority on that, but if you know, a community group wanted to raise funds or something like that, you know, I'm gonna put our supervisor's email in the chat real quick here. Heart. But then again, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, or if you want him to do more or complain to him.
He's in charge of the AIS program, so he's the man to talk to.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. We don't get paid enough to be yelled at. Yeah, no, make sure you have your waterway access permit. That's what funds our program. Or your invasive species sticker if you have a motorized watercraft.
Great job, you guys. Just let us know how we can support, or you know, how we can help extend the prevention time and increase the prevention measures, and how to get it taken seriously at the levels it needs to be heard at to see the partnerships to make it effective.
Well, everybody is welcome and can
speak
to
they can speak to their representatives.
And
you can give Keith an email and he can forward it up the chain. But yeah, that's I mean, there's a lot of, you know, really please talk to your neighbors, please wash your boats, please make fun of your neighbor if he does have a dirty boat,
or call ODFW on him.
peer pressure them.
And I know that Tim Davis, the executive director of Friends of the Owyhee, did go to Malheur County commissioners and talk with them about the threat to Lake Owyhee. But those of us who are local and have concerns can also bring that forward to the commissioners to keep reminding them that this is a problem that we want more attention paid to because of the impact that it can have on our not only our recreation but our economy if these get in.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for hosting us.
Yes.
We really appreciate it.
We really appreciate having you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate everyone who came and had questions. And this will this was recorded, and so we will have it on the website of Friends of the Owyhee. And feel free to share it with your friends so that we can get the word out. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sierra and Sarah, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having
Thank you.
us.
Okay. All right. Bye.
All right, bye.